Hello, welcome again to our podcast. So we're starting this again after about a year and a half, and we're
Yes.
going to talk about creativity
Yes.
and the limits of the human brain in terms of creativity.
Yeah.
So I'm Mo, and this is Ken.
Yeah.
And Ken is an expert on neuroscience and everything to do with the brain. And we usually have lots of long discussions about sort of such topics. Last time we spoke about creativity, and I thought let's um, sort of share it with everyone here.
Yeah. And since you have a technological background and AI, it's interesting to talk about AI creativity as well.
That's right. Yeah. So I'll add a bit on how AI and just technology can augment our creativity, especially going forward with what we're seeing with large language models and
Yeah.
like these image generation models.
Hmm.
Yeah, let's start. I think we had a so several varieties to discuss. The first one was like sensory limits. We had technological limits, and we had
Cultural limits.
yeah, we had other limitations. But we'll start one by one and let
Yeah.
you talk about it.
Yeah. The first thing is like, are there any limits or is it limitless? Because a lot of people in the creative domain and technological domain say like human creativity is limitless according to our imagination. Nice to think about that in this way, but because then you can imagine that humans are capable of doing anything. But at the same time, we live in a world of limits and scarcity, right?
Mm,
If we don't understand our own limits, we won't understand how far we can actually push or how far we can improve,
mm,
right? And the first hard limit is the biological limit of our sensory limits. So we have only specific types of senses that we are evolved from, vision, hearing, smell, taste, touch, kinesthetic sense, temperature sense, right, sense of time and space, and a lot of the artistic efforts come from those senses, right? So for visual sense, visual arts; for hearing sense, music, language, poetry; smell is perfumes, making smells in an artistic way; taste is making food, cooking, uh, and then touch is a lot to do with technology, like design is linked with touch, and massage linked with touch,
mm.
and then temperature is to do with
So,
like.
so all of these we're talking about right now are senses of the human body.
Yeah.
So you're basically saying part of the limitations are we can't be creative in a sense that we don't have.
Yeah, exactly. So other animals have other senses that beyond our perception. So like ultrasound, infrasound, ultraviolet vision.
Yeah. So they can
So
make hypothetically with
if they're intelligent and they're creative, they
they
can
c-
make an art for
yeah.
ultraviolet, let's say.
Mm.
But we
I think
you
flowers are basically like they're they're beautiful for us, even for us.
yes,
But I think bees and other insects can see ultraviolet light.
that's right. Yeah, many
Yeah.
insect can see it. It's to for them to guide because ultraviolet the flower shines on ultraviolet
Mm.
light even more, so it guides the insects on which one to go on, for pollination. Um, yeah, so hypothetically, if we can make an art out of ultraviolet, hypothetically, but there would be no one to experience it,
Mm.
right? No one to appreciate. Even the person who made it wouldn't be able to appreciate it,
Not
right?
really.
You still need to color code it with our
Exactly.
colors. Yeah. So
But a bee will be able to appreciate it.
yeah, if you make it for a bee,
So
it's
hypothetically, if I made like if I wanted to prank someone and I had a backpack, you
okay.
know,
Okay.
and then if I like stencil some ultraviolet flowers, would
Yeah.
bees navigate towards the backpack
Yeah.
or
Exactly.
clothes even? Would that actually be a thing?
Yeah, it would be. Yeah,
Or
if you if you,
how
you can
about
attract things that people can't see.
how about
Yeah.
having like a sticker or something, ultraviolet sticker,
Yeah.
and then you just like put it onto someone's like I don't know
Yes.
clothes or something, or
There,
like a
there,
stencil you spray on.
there's an interesting thing. So when for crime novels
Uh
or
huh.
crime shows, I saw that there is an ultraviolet light or something you can shine on. Like if
Yeah.
there's a blood, like a patch that's been cleaned, but you can't see with your own eyes because it's
Mm.
already been cleaned. But if you shine ultraviolet light on it, it will
Too
still have the
clean.
spot.
Oh, you still have the spot.
Yeah, because you can't clean the spot that shines
Ah.
ultraviolet. Yeah, or it takes away longer. Yeah, so you can basically track crime with that. Yeah, but in a sense, like the hard limit is our biology is something we can produce art for our own senses, and we can appreciate art that other people have made using our senses, and
Mm.
anything beyond our senses are unintelligible to us. So how limiting our senses are, for example, vision. the ultra electromagnetic radiation is a huge spectrum,
Mm,
and the visible light is like a tiny band that we can see,
mm,
and there's like massive band of like microwave, radio wave,
mm.
X-ray or gamma
So if
rays.
aliens are trying to communicate with us, we're currently looking at wavelengths,
Yeah,
electromagnetic wavelengths.
they're all light.
Yeah. But yeah, I guess since we're looking at all kinds of wavelengths, we should be able to get communication if they communicated to us in wavelengths. Is that going to be hypothetically not possible?
I mean, we are sending out to space all of the different wavelengths, like radio waves. We're sending out messages with radio waves, microwaves, as well as I mean, higher frequency waves are much more difficult to send because they don't travel too far. They get stopped by anything that come to it. But radio wave can go through things because they're much
One
less
thing I was like thinking about is so my brother, like my youngest brother, he's been developing games on the phone,
yeah.
and one of the games he made was about mixing colors. So the
Mhm.
goal was to mix up the colors given into the target color,
Yeah.
and that's surprisingly difficult.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and but the reason, like, you'd think, like, of course, if you get what yellow and blue, you get green, but we all know that. And then just say even with that basic knowledge, like, once you get into like colors that, of course, you've seen, you don't really. It's surprisingly difficult to mix other colors together to get to that color,
To get the target color.
to get the
Yeah,
target color.
for
But
sure.
like that's within the
The
electromagnetic,
light,
yeah, the
just the light
spectrum.
that we can
Yeah,
see.
so even within the light spectrum that we are used to in our normal life, we're not day to day. We're not used to mixing colors together.
Yeah,
So even the
yeah,
process is all also about processes. We're not used to just mixing colors together,
yeah.
and so it just doesn't come to us naturally to understand how to mix colors to
And
get to
also,
the
like
target.
people see colors differently too.
Mm,
Some people are colorblind,
mm,
and even people who are not colorblind, normal vision, our cones are have different modulation of the light. So let's say you have the red. We all have red, green, blue of the cones, but you see a different version of red than I do, slightly different, right, than I do. And so when you look at the world, the color is slightly different to you perceptually, but you wouldn't know to compare it to someone else because you've never seen someone else's
does that
perspective.
help towards making art subjective, do you think?
There's slight subjectivity there, yeah, but we can use language to understand each other. So, for example, like if I see green leaves, I can ask you, like, do you see the green that
Yeah,
I do?
but it's like green enough,
Green
basically.
enough, yeah,
Yeah.
for us to communicate. But technically, we actually see different green. That's been proven in research,
Mm,
where basically there are different lights that's shining, like red light or green light, and you
mm,
can modulate the frequency slightly and see the combination of those two color, and then you tell people like, okay, just modulate a bit so that you see green, and then they ask a different person that, okay, modulate the way that you want that you see actual green, right?
mm,
And then every person give flat side different frequency,
mm,
which means their eyes, the cones are a little different.
mm. Or even the brain processes it
Or the brain
differently.
process
Yeah.
differently, exactly.
There's so much to it, right?
Yeah. And then we can't perceive something like magnetic fields, right? Magnets, and for example, like sharks can see magnets and electrical field.
Oh, I didn't know that sharks can see magnetic fields, or they
Yeah.
can
Oh,
sense it.
sorry, the pigeons can see.
Pigeons.
Yeah,
I
sharks can
didn't know
see
that.
electrical fields.
Ah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Because of course they're in water, and so so
Electrical
fields
fields can spread through water.
much
So,
faster. Yeah.
yeah.
But
So
magnetic fields, birds need you to navigate.
to navigate, so the birds can literally they have a magnetite in their brain, a literal
Mm.
magnetite made from iron, which they can use it to orient themselves according to the Earth magnetic field.
So hypothetically, like if if birds, like because what birds are a type of dinosaur, right? So hypothetically,
Yeah.
if there was some intelligent species of dinosaurs in the past and made civilization, they could have,
Dinosaur civilization.
yeah, like how, because right now we have like visual signs telling us directions.
Right.
Hypothetically, they could have magnetic fields telling each other directions.
Oh yeah, or they can point to different magnetic fields,
Yeah,
like from the
yeah.
Earth.
It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, sort of, yeah.
Yeah.
I was
Turn right for this magnetic field direction.
But because they can sense it, so for them it's like, yeah, of course. Like with us, it's just all visual.
Yeah.
With them, it's like, oh yeah, just they can. And what if or what I was thinking was, what if within a shopping mall or airport,
Yeah.
they could modify the magnetic field a bit. Of
Yeah.
course, it's probably more tricky, just 'cause that's a bit difficult. But
Mm.
if they could, then the sort of walking paths would just be along a magnetic field.
Yeah, that'd be really
That'd be
cool.
really easy because they just sense it. They just go down their like innate, like natural thing.
Yeah, yeah. And creating art from a magnetic field is also very difficult for us.
Mm,
Counterintuitive because we can't sense it.
mm,
Or electrical fields like sharks. The reason why shark can see it because like if one of the fishes start to bleed or something,
mm,
the fish's nervous system bleed through it because the nervous system made from basically like ions,
mm.
right? The ions bleed through the water, which the shark
Ah,
can see, and
that's really interesting.
that's how they track their prey. Yeah.
Yeah. So I want to add a point on like the computation or the thought processes. So it's like we spoke about we can see colors, but we're not good at even mixing them. It's like one level removed.
Yeah.
Um, so even with like like our sense of smell, like other animals, especially dogs, and even I think even when you go down to the smallest levels, like bacteria, they essentially like smell
Yeah.
like
They
much
can
better.
detect
Yeah,
chemicals. Yeah.
exactly, chemical signals,
Yeah.
and that's I think a lot more innate and a lot more older sense.
Much older sense. Yeah.
Yeah, but
So visual sense and a more electromagnetic sense, it came later in the evolution.
mm,
The earlier senses were touch and smell.
but because our visual sense is so important to us, our sense of smell is actually much worse, right?
It's
But then compared to dogs, for example.
Yeah, so the intensity of how much we can smell is worse, but the variety of smell we are better than dogs.
Oh,
We can
really?
actually
I
smell
didn't know
over
that.
a trillion smells,
But,
almost a
oh,
trillion.
really? But dogs can't.
The dogs have a more limited
But why do
variety
you always think? Why do we tend to think that dogs can smell better than us?
because they can smell more intensely. So even small
Ah,
concentration of smell they can detect, but we can't detect unless it's high concentration. But the variety of different,
but why is that? Why did we?
it's because of our variety of taste in food, because we cook and
Oh, because we
we're
just
able
started
to.
cooking food.
That's right. Yeah. So our repertoire of smells on taste are much higher. Yeah,
That's a
and
really
also
interesting
because
fact.
we're omnivores. I mean, dogs are omnivores too, but we eat a large variety of food than dogs can.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is why I like Ken. Like you always learn something about. So
Yeah.
let's move on to technological limits.
Yes.
So what creativity do we have now from technology?
When people think about mm, creativity, they think about paintings and photography. So let's just talk about photography, right? Photography exists because there's photographs.
Hmm.
The technology of photography exists. And before photography, there were paintings that look like a photography, like the painting that look exactly as
Yeah,
real,
yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah.
But that kind of paintings went out of fashion when photography
Yeah, yeah,
technology
yeah.
was
'Cause
developed
before
because
the
you don't
best
need.
paint, yeah, before the best painter was the one that could make something as much lifelike as possible.
Yeah, yeah.
But then when
That's
photography
one of the
came,
schools of
yeah,
painting. Yeah.
but then there's no need for that once you
Yeah,
have a photograph.
exactly. So since photography took over, new forms of arts.
Photography took the jobs.
Yes, yeah, exactly. And also photography posed more challenges than the
Mm,
painter had
like what?
because a photographer can change can zoom in things. A photographer can manage light, how much light comes into the camera.
Mm.
It can basically control the frequency of the light, how much light comes in, things like
There's
that.
the bokeh effect. There's
Yeah,
like
all of that.
the
So
yeah.
and the more creative you are, the more you will combine all those tools to create an art
Mm,
that connect with emotionally, right? You can, and also another thing was like, no matter what technology you use, if the art does not connect to your emotion or once another person's emotion, that art will not be appreciated. It
mm,
will just be, oh, that's a nice looking thing, but if it needs to have a meaning behind it, right? Deeper
mm.
meaning for people to appreciate that art. And another one.
So is that a limit of the technology where like on the one hand it
Mhm.
replaced like existing painters, but and then pose some new challenges, but on the other it's sort of like it meant that you can take a photograph that's not really creative, it's just like dull,
Yeah, yeah. If you just take a picture of anything you see
random, yeah.
without any thought behind it, it's just a photograph. But
Yeah.
in order to
But
be
it's not
art,
creative, yeah.
yeah, in order to be art, I mean, a lot of people take selfies of themselves all the time, right? But they're not considered art per se, right? Unless the person is, making
Mm,
art of their face. But if for it to be art, it has to combine if intentionally combine those photography tools, how to
mm,
manage light, how to manage composition, how to manage. like objects or subjects in your field. So if you don't do that actively and also create a meaning behind it, like a story behind it or the purpose behind your art, people usually value it less if you don't do it.
Mm.
If you just do it, just like normal photography.
Yeah, there has
You
to be
know,
some meaning, something extra behind
yeah,
it. So I like that you gave the example last time we spoke about this about time travel, and that
yeah.
before like technology started improving, we just no one even could even have the conception of time travel.
Yeah, before the relativity theory of relativity was developed in the 1900s, there were no stories of time travel recorded before then at all. Like in mythical
What was
stories,
like there was the earliest novel was like Time Traveler's Wife or something? Was that one of the
no, no, that's earlier than
even
that.
earlier?
Yeah, yeah.
When was that? When did those ones come out?
Those all came after the relativity.
Oh, really?
Yeah, yeah, all of them. Before that, there was time. You being able to travel in time is something so unintuitive to us.
Mm,
Because we intuitive to us now because we know it. It's like common
mm.
knowledge. But people in the past, like, how can you travel time? Because
Yeah,
time you
that
can't.
wasn't even a concept.
In a concept, yeah,
Yeah.
because time is something that we live in. We can't escape it ever, and
Mm,
the thought never come to the mind at all. And all the mythical stories about gods and monsters and religious stories, they never mention time
mm. Oh, there
travel.
was a Kronos. Was that the god of time in Greek
The chrono
mythology?
time, yeah. So it basically it means a force. So when every god or titan depicted in myth, it's like a force of nature,
Mm,
right? So Zeus is a force of lightning and
mm,
weather, and Venus is or Aphrodite is a force of love, let's say, and then Kronos is a force of time. So
mm.
which basically means you can't escape it. It
But
basically
like they couldn't have. I mean, but there's no stories about to do with time, even though they had a god of time.
they're the god of time, yeah. Just to say that it's a force that
So,
we
but
we
there's no
live together.
stories about him. It's just
Or traveling through time, no, never,
no. Oh
no,
wow,
none of them, yeah.
that's
But
interesting,
but
right?
the
Yeah,
modern stories of him
yeah.
traveling through time that exists.
After
But
the after
after that, yeah,
Einstein figured out the
that's
theory of
right,
relativity,
yeah.
yeah. Isn't that insane? Like, imagine how many more paradigms that we're just waiting to happen until we can even have.
Create
Yeah,
art or stories
yeah.
out
But
of them,
there's some concept we can't even think about now, just because some physics theory hasn't been invented yet
yeah. Or
or
our
discovered.
understanding of the world is not perfect yet.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's insane. But it doesn't even have to be perfect, right? Necessarily, because we could go down different directions of creativity.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And then of course, like with technology comes adoption. So no matter what technology you use, if you don't adopt it, like the thing to do with like virtual reality, augmented reality, you can create art on those bases. Because I've seen a startup where basically, let's say you have a T-shirt with a photograph on it, like a wedding photograph or something, and then you can take a phone and then AR, and then that wedding photograph will turn into a wedding video,
Mm.
just like the
Oh,
camera
with the
pointing
QR code, type of
or
thing.
the code hidden in the photograph
Yeah,
or
yeah.
something like that. Yeah. So and then the AR will activate, augmented reality will activate, so we create art out of it.
Mm.
Or maybe in the future, you just point your phone or camera at a painting, and the painting will come alive with
Mm.
augmented reality. You can use those. There's tools like that now. You can create those arts, but the limit is wide adoption because very few people have those technology or know how to use it. Like nobody will care at the
Mm. So
moment.
that's a limit of that. That's a
Yeah,
technological limit, just adoption.
adoption. Yeah,
Yeah. Like
and
if people, for example, just didn't bother with smartphones,
yeah,
like we wouldn't have like games, mobile phone games, for example.
yeah,
That's a form of creativity, right?
yeah, yeah. And games as well. Like one of the things I do in video game is you can take photograph in games. So there's something called photo mode where the games are made of like vast virtual worlds, or real or fictional, and you can basically uh, play through that world with your character. But in the photo mode, you can freeze frame whatever frame you want, and you can also adjust the contrast of the camera, the lighting. You can adjust even the time of day, like as well in the virtual world, and they can create art out of it. And that's something called virtual photography. It's a very new kind of photography, but it's primarily taking pictures in virtual worlds or virtual characters or virtual
Mm.
landscapes. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really cool. Yeah, and that wouldn't be possible without
That wouldn't be possible
yeah
without the
3D virtual games.
exactly, exactly.
Cool.
Yeah,
Let's move on to the next one. Oh, I think I
conceptual.
think we sort of spoke about this when we talked about sensory limits. So this is conceptual. and cognitive limits.
Mhm.
So, how our current knowledge and understanding limit creative thoughts.
Yeah. Or cultural limits as well. Limits our thoughts. Mm. The first thing is like our knowledge of the world is based on human level of thinking. So we're not too fast or too slow. We're not too big or too small. We're in that range where we exist in reality, like 3D world, 3D sort of reality, and human level of reality. And of course, you can make art that is much faster than we can process. Imagine a video that has like speeding up really fast, right?
Mm.
You can create that, but then it will be like just noise to
I
us.
can't even
We
appreciate
can't
it.
even appreciate it. Yeah, it's too far beyond the world that we adapted to. Yeah. So, or if you have, or another thing is like when most of the Western world or Western food does not have the taste umami in it,
Mm.
right? Umami tastes. I mean, Italian food, of course, have umami because of the tomatoes. They put tomatoes in them. Um, but if you only eaten Western food your whole life,
Mm.
you actually want you can taste umami. Your tongue can taste it, but you will not have the concept of umami food. Like, what does
Mm.
it taste like? Like the but if you lived in Asia, Southeast Asia, where umami is very rich and the food is richer in general, like rich in taste,
Mm.
rich in spices, where then if you grew up in that environment and then you come to the Western world and then you eat the Western food that is too bland for you, right? So the
Mm.
concept of how you grew up and the experiences you had shape your future or like your new experience. It can make you feel aversive to that new experience, or it can make you enjoy that new experience even more.
Mm.
Right. So the umami is the conceptual model of the taste that maybe many Western people do not have because they never eaten. If they never eaten Asian food or Italian food, but if they eaten it, then they can expand that world for them in taste. Yeah.
Cool. I think we also had the example of, because the first thing when we first spoke about our like limits of creativity, the first thing that came to my mind is we can't think in like higher dimensions. Like our
Yeah.
brain, like with what you just said,
Mm-hmm.
essentially is we're limited by essentially our existence, right?
Yeah.
As in we have a roughly say 100-year lifespan. You know, we
Yeah.
are around this size. Um, but also we live in like a three-dimensional
World.
universe. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we can't intuitively we can't think in 4 dimensions.
Yeah. Or 2 dimensions.
Or even 2 dimensions. We
Yeah.
can't really have that concept because a two-dimensional creature, for example, can't have a digestive system,
Yeah. Exactly.
because that would just cut it in half.
Exactly.
There's a lot of these things. Um, but yeah, that's the first thing that came to my mind.
Mm.
I think only what Stephen Hawking, a very few physicists can.
Imagine in
Yeah,
4D, yeah.
yeah, but
I
and then
mean,
it's
there,
impossible
there
to.
there is a cube that's made in 4D. Well, it's in 3D, but a tesseract
Mm.
is even featured in the Marvel movies.
Yeah, and you
Yeah,
can like see it, but also it always just, like doesn't really make sense,
it
Like
doesn't
you
make
can
sense.
feel it makes sense, but no, it doesn't really.
Yeah,
Um, Did you watch the movie by Christopher Nolan about time? What was it called?
Interstellar.
No, not the other one. Tenet.
Oh, Tenet. I haven't watched
Yeah.
that.
So that was
Is it?
I thought it was really interesting, really cool, where there's this device that can reverse time. As if you go through it, then you start going backwards in time. But meaning time goes reverse for you.
Got it. Yeah,
But it's a bit like,
you're going back to the past, basically. Going back to
but
the
you
past.
you start moving in the past. As in the entire world looks like it's from your point of view, you're going forwards.
Got it.
But once you just go in, and once you come out of the machine, it's the same time except it starts running backwards for you. So
Oh,
you're
interesting.
going through the world as normal,
Right.
but the entire world is going backwards.
Oh, shoot.
But then
I
from
see.
everyone else's point of view, as in like everyone else's point of view would have been in the past, where they see you like walking backwards into the machine. You know what I mean?
Got it. Got it.
It's
That
it's
is
just
really cool. Yeah, really cool, but really weird to imagine as well.
exactly, we can't
Yeah.
really conceive it. Like, and I think a lot of people didn't like that movie because it's just hard to wrap your head around.
Yeah.
But I really liked it. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's Christopher Nolan, so like you can imagine it's going to be very convoluted. But actually, when you think about it, the storyline was very
Yeah,
straightforward.
Christopher Nolan is an artist, and he was exploring that element of
Mm-hmm.
reality, and and as you can see, most people can't appreciate it, even though it is an art form. What he created, the movie itself, is a
Mm.
beautiful art form, but when people can't appreciate it, it will not be as popular.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, that's the limit of that. Fascinating.
Should we move on to the next one?
Yeah.
So, psychological and biological limits. So, what does this mean?
So psychological limits. A lot of creative people I have noticed, and also shown from research, that they have a personality trait that's they basically what I'm trying to say is like creative people are a type of people, right? And most of the world's creative activities, creative projects are done by very few people. And most people, regardless of what people can tell you, like most people are not creative, right? You can think in a creative way, but most people don't engage with creative activity.
You're not on the fringe of like of creation in a sense, right? You're not creating something that never existed. Not really.
Yeah, yeah. You can copy things what other people created, like copy a drawing and things like that, but you cannot create something new, entirely new.
Most people can't do
Most
that.
people can't do it or don't want to do it. It's a motivation element too, because creative people have a deep desire to just make things, and they feel restless when they don't make it. They actually feel physically sick. They're like, I just need to do something, make something. And they sometimes some of the creative people they use art to as a therapy because they have high negative emotion in their personality trait, and they need art to calm them down, soothe them in a way when life is too much for them or they have anxiety or life in general. Yeah, so creative things it's like a need for them. It's a physical need as much as a need that we need to eat food. For them is a need to create and make things. And it's been shown that 80% of the art is done by like 15% of the people of the population, and those 15%, 80% of those create most of the art again. And
You
also
mean 20% of those make most of the art?
yeah, basically. And then most of the art that well, let's say the person like Mozart, for example, the composers, and they make like most of the modern music, like the symphony music we know today. He made thousands of music, but only a few of his creations become successful. Right? Even someone who's very productive, they make a lot of things, but very few of it is accepted by the people in general, right? So like there is that element of Pareto principle element to creativity. So the most successful people get the most resources, right? The best. So the most successful singers are not necessarily the best singers, that they're just the one that connected with the people the most, right? And then most of the things that they make are not successful. And only a few of those songs are successful. Yeah.
There's a double element to it, isn't it? There's like one thing that's creativity,
Yeah.
and then there's another thing where it's sort of accepted, as you said, by like the rest of everyone else.
Yeah.
But there's a dual element where just because something is liked by everyone doesn't mean it's creative, and just because conversely, just because something is like not is disliked or people can't understand doesn't mean it's not creative. You know, 'cause, like I think the Tenet was really creative.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
really like that.
It's just maybe that the creative is the current society is not ready for it.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that a bit later in the social cultural limits. But yeah, so many of the art, the one who made the Starry Night, what was his name again? Starry Night. The 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 artist that made the Starry Night, what's his name again?
Should we find out?
Yeah, let's find out quickly. It's on the tip of my tongue.
Van Gogh.
Van Gogh, yeah. So Van Gogh, when he made those paintings and creative paintings, many people at his when he was alive did not appreciate his art at all. He was actually lived in poverty, and he lived in his mom's house
That's
his entire
insane.
life,
Yeah.
and he has used drugs as well. I mean, that's
I
also
mean,
part
that
of it.
sort of goes along with being creative.
Yeah, so I'll get into the drugs and madness with creativity. There's a connection between them. Anyway, so with Van Gogh, like he most of his life he was not successful. Most of his art became successful after his death, when people actually see the later generation of people, artists.
He's just far ahead of his time.
He's far too far ahead of his time, yeah.
Mm.
And the beauty that he exhibited was something that the current paradigm of the creativity while he was alive couldn't appreciate it, but later on they could appreciate it, right? So maybe if your art is not appreciative now, is maybe that you just need to wait for new people to
Just wait until you
just
die.
until new generations come and appreciate your work after your death
Yeah. So if you want to get rich, just die.
in the next life. uh, and then the next element is the connection between. There's been neurological connection between madness and creative mind.
Mm,
So there's something called the schizotypical and schizophrenia. So schizophrenia is a condition, neurological condition, where you basically hallucinate, or you don't see the world. You see the world, the things in the world that doesn't exist,
mm.
or like you have you have paranoia about people coming after you,
Mm,
or you hear voices and you hear people like that want to kill you, things like that. So they're not functionable in
mm,
society, and interestingly, their relatives of that person or the patient are highly creative people.
mm,
So there's been links between hallucination and madness with creative genes in people who are very very creative. So there's a typical mind where basically what they see is like they see more of data, more of the noise of the perception,
mm,
right? So more connection. They see more connection between ideas and things and images, and some connections are completely bogus. They don't make sense, or they just are not true.
mm,
But because of the sheer volume of connection that they see, eventually one of them will be really good,
mm.
right?
I
So
see.
so people who have that gene in their brain, they see more of those connections, and then the schizophrenia is that the connections where most of the connections they make are wrong, right? It
It's
does not
interesting,
correspond
right?
with reality.
Because like your brain is just telling you what it thinks is the world,
Yes.
and with these schizophrenic people, and of course everything is on that spectrum, right?
Hmm.
Where like their brain is just sharing more of the raw interpretations with
Yeah.
the schizophrenic person,
Yeah.
but with like you and I, like was more like normal.
Yeah.
Um, I guess we're just more, we just don't see that, and
We don't
converse.
see the connection that they see.
Yeah.
With there is a wrong connection, but
Mm.
for them they literally believe it.
Yeah, but
They can't see
conversely, there would
anything
be
else.
people on the other complete opposite end of the spectrum where it wouldn't be, I guess, um, classified as a disease or something, but they would be like anti-creative. They have like no capability of seeing anything new at all.
Yeah. So I mean, in life, like in for life to function, you need to learn new information from the environment. So even the least creative people can learn new information, but they don't make new connections. So like novel connections. So like for example, you see a glass and you think the glass is strength for water, so you put water in. So you learn that glass and water are connected as an idea, like
Mm,
conceptually connected. But the creative people can see different uses of the glass that you
mm,
would never ever think about, right?
mm.
Maybe they'll use a glass as a hat,
I see. That's
right?
very creative. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
because
So
just a similar enough shape. But yeah,
yeah,
initially
they
I'm
see new
thinking.
functions of
Yeah,
objects where they couldn't exist before.
yeah. So that says Jackie Chan is very creative when he starts fighting
Yeah,
with
he
certain
is a
objects.
creative person actually. Yeah, but expresses creativity with kinesthetically, with
Mm.
martial arts and movement,
He's
right?
also like, I find it
He can
interesting.
pick up like a chair or table and
Yeah.
start flipping in and fighting with it.
What I find
Yeah,
really interesting, at that, I think in the 90s when I was growing, I think when we were growing up, like,
yeah.
he was very
I
popular.
love his
Yeah.
movies.
And like there was a lot, I watched a lot of like behind the scenes stuff, and like one of the things was actually he went to dance school,
Hmm.
and of course, he did martial arts, but like in his movies, he made sure that all the fights had a certain rhythm to
The
them.
rhythm,
I think
yeah.
I never noticed that until after I watched that documentary about it. I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah, he put a lot of effort and a lot of
Yes,
takes. You
yeah.
need to take a
So
lot.
yeah, of course, a lot of takes to get the things perfect, but also like
The
the
flow, the
yeah,
rhythm.
exactly. The
Yeah.
fight sequences are actually a dance.
Yes,
It's a
exactly.
dance fight.
Yeah, yeah, pretty much. And many of the movies, like the best movies ever made, are all linked to a rhythm
Mm,
as well. So I've learned about there's a book about the editing. There's a movie editor wrote a book about how editing works, process work in movies, and he even say like, so what editors do is like before they edit the visual images, they would put music that is not the soundtrack, just a music that would fit with the rhythm, and then they would organize the visual elements as the rhythm of the song, and then they remove the song. So the visual elements, rhythm, our brain can still
mm.
detect it. the feel of it, and it can be as detailed as an actor blinking. So that can be part of the rhythm.
Mm.
There was a video about editing in Dune, the first Dune movie, where
Like
there
the
was
old one,
no the
the
new one,
first
the
one.
first one,
Yeah.
yeah. So it's a scene where Stilgar walks in for the first time to the Atreides, and then he starts spit. Yeah, he spits, and that entire scene, the editor or the director, he basically breaks down every single rhythm in there. So the way they spit, the way like the actor's eye move, they're all linked in the rhythm.
Wow.
And when you explain it, it makes sense. So if there's a
There's
flow
so
to
much
it,
art to it. Yeah.
there's so much art behind the scenes that we
That's
have.
one thing I find so interesting. Like until you, this isn't like why you do need to like learn how to do,
Mhm.
because anyone can just pick up a camera and just start recording stuff. But like, and
Yeah.
even you, a lot of movies have like multi-million like dollar budgets,
Yeah.
and this flop because I don't know, like, there's always something this like thing missing, you know.
Yeah.
Especially like the latest Star Wars trilogy, which is complete nonsense. Like, it just, I don't know, like it just misses. Like, it was visually really stunning. A lot of the things were really good, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
But it just
The narrative creativity missing.
yeah,
Right.
exactly.
There's lack of depth in characters. There's a lack of depth in the plot in general. Because
But it ticked all the boxes.
look at
Like,
the boxes. Yeah, it
that's the
looks
problem.
nice. It looks
Yeah.
great. Like, or is it like accessible to the global audience? Things like that. But that's not good storytelling, right?
Mm.
For the first Star Wars movies, the 6, 7, and 8, like though those three, like they were made from
4, 5, and 6. Yeah.
4, 5, and 6. Sorry. So Joseph Campbell, he's a mythologist that
Mm.
wrote a Hero with a Thousand Faces.
Mm.
So he wrote a book basically categorizing all the heroic stories from every culture in the world and then how they're so similar to each other.
Mm.
So there is an element of like the hero wants to leave the familiar place,
Mm.
go out into the unknown to fight and to conquer something, an idea or a place in mind, and then after that they bring back the idea back into the village, right? So that system of heroic journey,
Mm.
coming back to home, reunion,
Go into the unknown,
going to the unknown.
conquer something,
Yeah,
come back with like some type of resource.
yeah, exactly. So that is the prototypical storytelling element. And Joseph Campbell, he actually consulted with Star Wars.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
All right.
So the creator of Star Wars, he went to Joseph Campbell to get his thoughts because they were a big fan of his work. Yeah. So there's a lot of heroic story. For Luke Skywalker has is followed the typical heroic journey, and this is copy from all of the mythical journeys that come before. Yeah, which the new story lacks that
Yeah,
element
exactly. But
completely.
yeah, this is not a media review, so let's.
Anyway, yeah, so like we were talking about like the limits of that, cognitive limits, understanding, and our mind can see through something that it's superficial.
Mm.
Our mind can understand depth, right?
Mm.
Understand when the story is lacking in depth, we can feel that it's the characters are hollow, the story is
Mm.
hollow. We can feel it. There's
It's not a
something in
real.
us.
Yeah, it doesn't
There's
feel
something in
like
our
a real
perception.
person. Yeah,
There's
yeah.
something in our brain that cognitively we understand it.
So the next one is societal and cultural limits. I'll start a bit now. So like when I was growing up, we're in London right now, so I grew
Yeah.
up here, and I'm actually from an immigrant community. I mean, I was born here, but my parents and my grandparents like came here.
Mhm.
My dad was like they're really young, so I grew up um, because in a community where everyone was an immigrant, and now of course it's more mixed. So I've got this like experience where it's very Bengali, very Muslim first on the one hand, but then also very Western.
Mhm.
So it's like at the intersection of those. And
Is the community isolated from the British communities, British culture in general?
I think growing up, maybe yes.
Mhm.
Now I'd say no.
Okay.
I think it's just one of those things where it takes time to assimilate, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Maybe one or two generations.
yeah, it's just one of those things. There's pros and cons. I'm not happy that I don't think that it was the best thing to have all of immigrant communities just like together.
Bunched up in
Yeah, because like
one
in
place.
the schools I went to, like it was like 95% like Bengali Muslim, you know.
Yeah.
But in terms of like creativity,
Or people consumption of art or understanding of art, how they're different from.
yeah, I think it's definitely different, you know, because of course, like, you know, now I'm more sort of fully multicultural, I guess.
Mhm.
before it was entirely, like part of the immigrant community. I think like those the art forms are completely different. The thing is, I wouldn't say it's limitations. It's just like there's certain types of like in terms of Islamic art, there's certain patterns that are more prominent in Islamic art, and there are
Course.
other patterns that are more
Like
prominent in Western art.
yeah, calligraphy is
Yeah,
very important in Western art, or like the carpet design, very
exactly.
prominent.
It's
Yeah,
very yeah.
yeah, important. But in the Western is like more paintings and music are more important. Even music is different
Mm.
for different cultures.
One limitation of like Islamic art is well, first depends how strict you are, but you're not allowed to draw like anything alive. You're not allowed to have like, of course, everyone knows about not drawing the prophet.
Prophet,
Yeah,
yeah.
but technically speaking, you
Or
actually
prophet or their family members as
yeah.
well. Yeah,
Well, I think that's like a very bad, but you're actually not allowed to draw anything that's alive,
not even animals.
not even animals.
Yeah, because of idolatry.
Idolatry,
Yeah,
exactly. Nothing. There should be no likeness or something that's alive made.
yeah. So the art form was a more abstract, more language based.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
rather
But
than
but then nowadays, because of everyone becoming a lot more like liberal,
right,
those art gets made anyway.
right. So Western world art is more imagistic, less abstract. I mean,
As
there's
in,
abstract art,
yeah, I was just saying that that is a limitation. It's like a religious, cultural
of
limitation.
course, yeah. So the culture puts bans certain type of art within the
Mm,
boundary of the culture, right? Some cultures in the past have censored, and if you live in a dictatorship or communist country, uh, you're not allowed to make art that criticizes the government, right? Drawings of the governmental figures or creating humor. Humor is a type of art as well. So creating humor to make fun of the government, so those times are complete and not allowed. And if you do it, you'll be You'll be
mm.
taken away to
Yeah, like in
jail.
China, you're not allowed to make you're not allowed to compare Xi Jinping to Winnie the Pooh,
Yeah,
right?
because someone did it
Mm,
on the internet and it became popular,
mm.
and then they just cracked down on
Which
every
is just
person who shared.
completely stupid. Well, yeah,
From our perspective, it's stupid. From
yeah,
their perspective, it's disrespecting the
exactly.
person, the leader.
Thing is, like, I mean, just to give 1 point to China, since we said that, like, I think completely different, but I think recently I learned that social mobility is higher in China than in the United States. As in, if you're born poor in the United States, you're more likely to stay poor than in China. As in, a poor person in China has a better chance than someone in the US, poor person in the US
Yeah,
of becoming rich.
yeah, and that's mainly because of the economic situation they're in. They're just growing, and when you're growing society, when you're growing economically, the brighter children, the brighter people who even come from a lower economic background can jump the status level,
Yeah,
right? But if you're already in established economies, it's very hard to climb up, right? Even
yeah,
if you're
a
bright,
lot more entrenched.
it's a lot more
Yeah.
entrenched, a lot more barriers to entry. Like for example, if you want to go to a Harvard University, or like for creative person, if you want to go to the best creative university, you need to pay, right?
Mm,
If you're pay from your own debt, or if you don't have a debt system in your country, like you know, bad luck, or you can't do anything, or
so
your parents pay for the
Another
education.
limit would be like in North Korea, like I think men are only allowed one of, I don't know, a few types of haircuts and women as well.
Oh yeah, exactly. So the hairstyle as an art cannot establish there
Mm,
because that's an arbitrary rule they made,
mm,
right? In order to limit people' creative expression of hair. Maybe for them, hair is something that's sacred to them or important to
mm,
them. So yeah, and also women like long hair in women is seen as fertile and beautiful in many culture, and some cultures, women actively cut hair, right? Or men cut hair or have longer hair. So like every culture have those taboos and rules, and your creative expression, you can go beyond the boundary. So if you live in a free country or free rural country, you can test those boundaries and you can break those boundaries, and you may not have that repercussions or punishments,
mm,
but in more stringent restricted cultures you'll be punished if
mm.
you go beyond that boundary that the culture set up. Yeah.
Are there other societal cultural limit you can think of that's worth mentioning? So I think a lot of these, like, we can see are quite arbitrary rules that culture or society places, and it's sort of like you can still imagine other things. What limitations do we have right now in the West? We can't talk about.
Can't talk about racial, racial slamming or slurring. or racial jokes and
Not
things
in
like that.
public.
Not
Yeah.
in public, yeah, or sexist jokes and things like that, or sexist art, things that the topics that the modern world cares about.
Mm.
If you make art that make fun of that, you'll be punished
Mm. So what does
on
that mean?
social
What
media.
does that mean though? What are the repercussions of it?
Social isolation, so you'll
Yeah.
be isolated from resources or groups
Yeah.
or influence.
So what I was
You'll be
meaning was,
banned.
I think like one limitation would be we can't have an honest discussion about topics we can't make fun of.
Exactly. That's another thing. So in a more freer culture, we should be able to discuss things that we disagree with. That should be the rule, right?
Mm.
And that's the freedom of speech philosophy. And freedom of speech countries are actually quite rare in the world. Most of
Mm.
the cultures in the world do not like freedom of speech.
I think originally freedom of speech was only in universities, right?
Yeah.
And
It came from
now that's the worst place to do it, right?
yeah, it came from academic circles.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
But
then
even outside of academia, that even in the past, there was no freedom of speech, really, right?
no, not at all. Yeah,
Yeah,
not
it's
at all.
only within like Oxford and Cambridge where it was like, I can't remember what it's called, but yeah, like only the professors were allowed to just
You need to have
pontificate.
authority
Yeah,
first before you're allowed to speak something
think.
that's a little bit outside of
Yeah,
that authority,
yeah.
right? Yeah.
All right. So the next one, number 6, is the limits of creative expression in relation to novelty and acceptance. That's quite a mouthful. So, like, how novel ideas often face resistance before gaining acceptance.
Yeah. So this is what we were talking about, right? We can create art that only the artist can experience, but if you want to, make yourself successful or more people appreciate your art, you need to share it to the community, to the world, to people that you know, or etc. And those ideas, if it's very creative, like if it's very creative, very novel,
Mm,
it's way beyond people's current perceptions or current
it's like,
understanding,
yeah.
and people would just resist it. Like, I don't
But
understand
after
this.
it
I don't
overcomes that
like this.
resistance, it's just like everyone
Yeah.
uses it.
So if you stick around with your ideas, if you believe it's true, if you believe it's worth value, if you stick around with it, eventually, maybe the next generation will appreciate it better, right? So a lot of devices that's being made, for example, like in the past we made like there's been so many technologies and gadgets and even made, but only a very small number of designs become popular. Like the
Mm,
smartphone, for example, we see the smartphone as being popular because it's the most popular thing. It's a survivorship bias. We don't know all the devices that came before it that died,
mm,
right? The BlackBerry, used to be quite popular, but now it's gone, completely gone. Like the physical keyboard
mm,
used to be have that value, but now the smartphone has a
mm.
screen
So
that
in the
has the
past,
digital keyboard.
with the smartphone, with phones, in the past, before iPhone came out, if you try to make a smartphone without a keyboard, a physical keyboard,
Yeah,
that just wouldn't take off.
it wouldn't take off. It's even counterintuitive, right? The iPhone when they designed it, I would say is a piece of art. It's very beautiful. They make very simple, very beautiful. Apple back in the day was incredible. It
Mm,
still probably is as well. But yeah, so but that conception of like we don't need the keyboard, right?
mm,
That conception is difficult to convince people, and because Apple did it and they were successful, other companies just copied that. They knew that there's market demand for it, so
mm.
market forces and people desire to have something. It can affect your ideas very much, right?
I'll
The
say,
uptake of your
I'll
ideas.
say a funny one.
Yeah,
I've got this bad habit of like I do not mind. I take better care of my phones nowadays, but like the iPhone now is waterproof.
right.
So after that, like if I went to a swimming pool, I wouldn't mind just to keep it not I wouldn't keep it submerged, but I wouldn't like if I would just like not
You
mind.
just take it with you
Yeah,
at the
exactly.
pool.
But
Yeah.
like everyone else would be like so scared. But that's another thing of like they wouldn't even have the conception of like having it near water.
Yeah, even if it's waterproof, people are still scared of
Yeah, which
put it
makes sense.
this way.
I agree with that, but I
Yeah,
think like I don't know. I take good care of my phone. I mean, even though it's been in the water, it lasts forever
I mean
pretty
it's
much.
designed to last in the
Mm,
water, right? But I think it's a conception of people like to break that jam or to even value waterproof function in the phone because
mm,
they're never gonna put their phone in the water anyway.
mm,
Why would I care about that
mm.
feature, right? But if you work with water a lot or if you go to pools often,
Quite important.
it's quite important. Yeah. So those kind of things, right? So which features are accepted, And many of the technology that are invasive, like that goes beyond our body, they're mostly rejected by market forces. People don't
Mm.
want those technology that cause pain on your body.
But you think in the
So anything
future,
that prick your skin with pain, or anything that's why a lot of the health technology hasn't taken off wide adoption. There's a few. I mean, if you're very sick or if you have cancer and
yeah,
things
you
like
don't have
that,
a choice.
you don't have a choice. You want to have it. But for most healthy people,
Do you
they
think in the
don't want to
future
have it.
that's going to change as
It
technology
will
gets?
not change. Yeah, yeah. So we need to have technology that does not it is not invasive, and it
Mm.
is not resistant to our immune system. So our
Mm.
immune system, anything that we put, any technology or any foreign object that's put in our body, the immune system will attack it,
Mm.
and it can cause us a lot of sickness and pain. And as a result, a lot of those technologies are not accepted unless, for example, like the for the heart device, that's the pacemaker and things like that, you put it inside the heart.
Mm.
That is for a very small percentage of people, right? But most people don't want those technologies in your bodies. So yeah, there's limits of that, wide adoption limits.
Cool. I want to go through a few other like things, barriers that exist. So I think like
Mhm.
I guess on the one hand, um, every new technology like has this barrier because people have to learn about it. People have to feel safe and comfortable.
Yeah,
Like buying anything online. Before it was like, no, they're gonna steal your identity.
right. Yeah,
Now it's
there's
normal.
fears of that. Yeah,
Yeah,
fears of you're losing your money, losing your identity,
yeah.
losing your bank cards, right? There's trust, or like, are people gonna actually deliver the stuff to me? Those kind of fears. But
Mm.
then most eBay and Amazon prove that a lot of people are quite responsible for the trading.
Mm.
They actually are they're truthful in their promises.
But it's sort of like anything novel has this like barrier, you said. Like
Yeah.
what other are there any things that we've missed in terms of like
And also people who adopt new ideas, new products, there's percentage of people like who have a certain personality type called extroversion,
mm,
that they enjoy novel experiences, novel things, novel factors in their life. So they're the early adopters of those technology, and they usually test the technology as a community, or as a whether the technology works or not, right?
mm,
And to work with the human body, with the mind. And the later adopters are the majority of people, or the introverts. They are much more cautious of adopting new technology. Like they're more cautious of harmfulness, right? The early adopters, they don't really care about being harmful. They just want to get something new all the
something,
time,
yeah, just
something
new
new.
experience.
Yeah.
All right, so I think let's sort of like we've covered the major 6 points of creativity. So I do have a question. So why is creativity important? So again, let's sort of define. Let me define
Great.
what we meant by creativity that's
Sure.
up till now actually. But
Yeah.
like to me, what it meant was um, essentially creating something novel
Yeah.
that never existed before.
Yeah.
For me, that's what
Making new
creativity is.
connection between ideas and images as well.
Yeah.
That's a type of creativity, creative thinking.
Basically, it's about creating something new that never existed, right?
Yeah.
Without an idea or a product in the real world, right?
I mean, technically, like, you can't create something completely new, because
It's
you
a
need to build the
mishmash of,
knowledge
yeah,
from things you already know,
yeah.
from your experiences. So people who have
But
made
that's another
things before.
limitation,
That's
right?
another
Yeah, yeah.
limitation. Yeah. So our brain cannot create something that's beyond our senses, beyond our knowledge, or reality even, right? So not completely novel, but novel beyond the current acceptance of technology and creative ideas. Yeah.
Why is creativity important?
It's important because it's, mm, I would say creative is a testing ground for the future, I would say. So the future, we're creating things for the future all the time,
Mm,
and there are a lot of failures. So creativity has high failure rate, like very high failure rate, 95, 90,
mm,
95% failure rate. Most of the things you create will fail. That's
mm.
just how it goes,
What does
right?
fail mean? It just wouldn't be accepted by everyone.
It wouldn't be accepted. It would not work according to, like, you would think, you would imagine it will work, but when you create it and make it, it just don't work.
Ah, okay, like you paint a piece of art and you're like, oh, it wasn't as good as I imagined.
Yeah, exactly. So it's some things like, inconsistency between imagination and reality. You can create a perpetual machine, but it will not work in
Ah,
reality.
yeah, of course, yeah.
Yeah, things like that, right? So yeah, so it's a testing ground to create something that novel, not just novel, but create solutions for the futures that the problem that we will face or we're currently facing, right? It is the front of knowledge and front of
The frontier of human.
the frontier of human innovation. Creating things, making things, discussing things, even like socially and politically. We creative works can actually inform political change,
Mm.
right? So people, there's a photograph I remember. So when Syrian conflict happened and a lot of Syrian refugees coming over to Europe for immigration, most of the European countries did not want to let in those immigrants, right? Because they
Mm.
think there are terrorists in them as well. But then there was one photograph that was so beautiful and sad as well at the same time. Basically, it's a scene of the Greek. They come from to the Greek beaches in Greece,
Mm.
and they're staying. A lot of the refugees are staying there. There was a photograph of a dead baby
Mm.
in the
It's really
beach. It was
sad.
so beautifully sad. It's not beautiful in a happy sense, but it's very
Mm.
sad. But that image, when a lot of political leaders saw that image, that activated that deep sense of empathy, human empathy, that people are suffering,
Mm.
people need our help, and a lot of political leaders opened their borders after seeing that. I mean, that image is not the primal cause of it,
Of course,
of
yeah.
course, but it's one of the contributors of them opening their borders. Like especially Germany. Germany opened a lot of the immigrants. I mean, that almost a million allowed to come in, and they actually cited that photograph
Mm.
to be one
So
of
you're saying that if there was less creativity in taking that photograph, or less like,
if there were no photographers or creative people in them
mm,
documenting there people, the wider empathy will not activate,
mm,
right? So those creative elements can actually inform and change people's minds and political movements as well.
cool. So creativity is important because it's helping us guide. It's helping guide humanity towards a
Yours,
better future.
exactly. There we
Cool.
go.
So I hope you've enjoyed this
Yes,
little
thank you for
podcast.
listening.